The stones of the Great Pyramid hold a secret more profound than any treasure. Ancient monuments across the world are whispering in a common language, a hidden mathematics embedded directly into their blueprints. From the jungles of Cambodia to the plains of England, builders separated by oceans and millennia used the same silent code of geometry and number. By the end of this exploration, you will gain a new lens to see these familiar wonders, revealing a forgotten chapter of human ingenuity that reshapes our entire view of history. How did cultures with no apparent contact design their sacred spaces using identical mathematical rules? And why would they encode this knowledge in stone instead of writing it down? What does it say about us that we are only now beginning to hear what these structures have been saying for thousands of years? This silent language begins with two shapes so primal they feel etched into our consciousness. The circle and the square. One is the endless curve of the horizon, the path of the sun, the cycle of the seasons. The other is the defined boundary of a field, the foundation of a home, the solidity of the earth itself. To ancient cultures, these were far more than convenient forms. They were symbols of cosmic order, a visual shorthand for the entire universe. The circle represented the heavens, spirit, and eternity. The square stood for the material world, stability, and the four cardinal directions. When an architect laid out a sacred site, they weren't just drawing lines in the dirt. They were attempting to manifest cosmic harmony, to build a piece of the eternal here on Earth. Historian of science Giorgio de Santillana described this system as a pre-scientific language, a shared set of rules understood across vast distances and different eras. It was a grammar of creation, written not in words but in relationships of space and proportion. And the most profound conversations in this language often started with a simple, elegant act. Take a circle and draw a square perfectly inside it, or place a circle snugly within a square. These are child's play with a compass and straightedge, yet they instantly generate mathematical constants of immense power. The ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, pi, emerges. The diagonal of a square relates to its side through the square root of 2. These are not just numbers for calculation. They are fingerprints of a deeper reality, relationships between the curved and the straight, the infinite and the finite. And here is the first great mystery. These same fingerprints, these geometric ratios born from the circle and the square, appear in the precise dimensions of monuments that should have no connection. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter relates to its height in a way that evokes the circle. Temples in ancient India and Cambodia encode the square root of 2 in their floor plans. It's as if every master builder, from the deserts of Egypt to the rainforests of Central America, was given the same first page of the same divine instruction manual. This shared geometric vocabulary provided the foundational rulebook. It was the first and most crucial step in a grand project, the act of using earthly materials to speak the language of the cosmos, setting a stable stage upon which even more astonishing numerical secrets could be built. But geometry was only the silent alphabet. To form a complete sentence, to tell a story, the ancients needed to connect their earthly designs to the moving clockwork of the heavens. This brings us to the first and most breathtaking application of their hidden mathematics, the art of turning architecture into a precise astronomical instrument. For them, the sky was not a distant spectacle. It was a living map, a divine calendar, the ultimate source of order. Predicting the solstice was not about marking a date on a wall. It was about survival, agriculture, and communing with the cycles of creation. So they built machines in stone, permanent observatories that did not just point at the stars, but captured their light in moments of perfect alignment. Take the great passage tomb of Newgrange in Ireland, a structure older than the pyramids of Giza. For most of the year, its inner chamber is a place of deep, silent darkness. But for a few days around the winter solstice, something miraculous happens. As the sun crests the horizon on the shortest day of the year, a slender beam of light penetrates a specially constructed opening above the entrance, a roof box. This golden shaft travels down the long, narrow passageway, finally flooding the central chamber with light for approximately 17 minutes before retreating. This is not a happy accident. It is a feat of engineering that required generations of precise solar observation. The builders had to solve a complex spatial problem, understanding the sun's shifting path along the horizon throughout the year, and then designing a structure to filter and direct its light with the precision of a laser. This was mathematics made manifest, a celestial event literally brought indoors and marked in stone and light. Across the Atlantic, in what is now the southwestern United States, the ancestral pueblones of Choco Canyon created a different kind of solar calculator. On a high cliff face, they carefully positioned large stone slabs so that daggers of sunlight and shadow would fall upon precise spiral petroglyphs carved into the rock behind them. On the summer solstice, a single spear of light perfectly bisects the largest spiral. On the equinoxes, a dagger of light frames it. Here, the architecture is the landscape itself, engineered to interact with the sun's journey. This sun dagger site demonstrates the same profound principle, the translation of celestial motion into a visible, predictable, and communal event. It turned an abstract astronomical concept into a shared experience, a public demonstration of cosmic order. These structures reveal a crucial truth. Ancient mathematics was not an abstract academic pursuit. It was deeply, vitally practical. It solved the most critical problems of their time, creating accurate calendars to guide planting and harvest, marking sacred seasons for ceremony, and anchoring human life to the reliable rhythms of the cosmos. The monument was the computer, its alignment the program, and the resulting play of light and shadow was the output, a readout from the universe itself. This celestial coding provided the first great function for their geometric blueprints, proving their mathematics was alive, dynamic, and intimately connected to the world around them. Yet, tracking the sun and moon was only one layer of their astronomical ambition. A more perplexing pattern emerges when we look beyond our solar system to the fixed stars and find that some monuments seem to be pointing not just to cyclical events, but to moments in time that repeat over spans so vast they defy simple explanation. The sky was their clock, but the earth became their canvas for a more permanent kind of mathematics. While solstice alignments captured moments in light, another principle sought to embed timeless numbers directly into the very proportions of the monuments themselves. This brings us to the Great Pyramid of Giza and a numerical whisper that has echoed for millennia. If you take the pyramid's original base perimeter and divide it by twice its original height, the result is a number startlingly close to pi, approximately 3.1416. This is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, a fundamental constant of our universe. The implication is breathtaking. A structure defined by straight lines and sharp angles appears to contain a hidden reference to the perfect curve of a circle. Was this intentional, a deliberate encoding of advanced knowledge into stone, or is it a fascinating byproduct of the builder's chosen methods? The debate among scholars is deep and ongoing. To understand it, we must look at the pyramid's geometry from the ground up. The builders used a unit of measurement called the royal cubit and a concept known as the sect, which defined the slope of the faces. By choosing a specific sect, they effectively locked in a set of proportional relationships between the base and the height. One compelling explanation is that they aimed for a shape of perfect geometric harmony, where the triangle of the face embodied a so-called golden proportion. The result, whether by direct intention or as a consequence of pursuing ideal form, is a structure that speaks the language of mathematics in every dimension. The perimeter relates to the height through pi. The area of each triangular face relates to the square of its height. It becomes a three-dimensional textbook of applied geometry. And this phenomenon is not unique to Egypt. Consider the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico. While its form is different, analyses of its proportions suggest the architects there, too, were working with a sophisticated understanding of ratios, embedding mathematical constants into its step design. Even the ancient ziggurats of Mesopotamia, massive step towers, display base-to-height relationships that scholars argue reflect a cultural appreciation for specific, harmonious numbers. This points to a second, profound layer of the hidden code. It wasn't just about aligning with the moving heavens. It was about building the heavens' perfect, unchanging rules into the static form of the monument. The structure itself became a permanent statement, a frozen equation meant to last forever. If the first principle used mathematics to connect Earth to sky, this second principle used mathematics to make the Earth itself sacred, to give it the proportions of the cosmos. But why go to such extraordinary lengths? Why bury this knowledge in tons of stone instead of writing it down on a scroll or a tablet? The answer may lie in a third, even more mysterious principle, one that suggests these monuments were not just observatories or textbooks, but perhaps something resembling a vast, interconnected network. Yet the most startling evidence for a shared mathematical culture may not be found in grand alignments or encoded constants, but in something far more mundane, a simple unit of measure. Travel from the Egyptian desert to the rolling green hills of the British Isles, and you enter a landscape dotted with silent stone sentinels, circles, rows, and solitary menhirs. For centuries, these megalithic structures were seen as the rough, mysterious work of primitive tribes. That perception began to shift dramatically in the mid-20th century, thanks to the meticulous work of an Oxford engineering professor named Alexander Thom. He wasn't an archaeologist by training, he was a man who understood precision. Over decades, Thom personally surveyed over 600 stone circles and other megalithic sites across Britain and France, taking thousands of measurements with a surveyor's theodolite. What he found in the data was a pattern so consistent it seemed impossible to ignore. The diameters of these circles, the distances between stones, the layouts of complex rings, they all appeared to be based on a common unit of length. Thom called it the megalithic yard, and he calculated its value at approximately 2.72 feet, or 82.9 centimeters. This was not a rough estimate. His statistical analysis suggested the builders were using this unit with an accuracy of plus or minus a few millimeters. If his findings are correct, the implications are profound. It means that 5,000 years ago, across thousands of square miles and among disparate communities, people were using the same ruler. Imagine teams of builders separated by dense forests and rugged terrain, each constructing their own sacred circle, yet each starting with the same fundamental measurement, a standardized template for the sacred. Sites like the vast, complex rings of Ovebury seem to bear this out. The diameters of its giant outer circle and inner settings are not random numbers. They appear as neat multiples of this proposed megalithic yard, as if the architects first decided on a symbolic number of units, then laid out the geometry to match. Even the iconic Sarsen circle at Stonehenge, when analyzed, shows dimensions that may be elegantly expressed in whole numbers of this unit. This points to a level of social and technical organization we rarely attribute to Neolithic societies. It suggests the existence of a specialized class, surveyors or master builders, who possessed this standardized knowledge and traveled between communities. They would have needed methods to accurately reproduce the unit over and over, perhaps using a physical standard like a carved rod, or a mechanical method like a pendulum of a specific length. More than that, they required the mathematical skill to use this unit in large-scale geometric planning. To create a perfect circle hundreds of feet across on uneven ground is no small feat. It involves understanding radius, diameter, and circumference. It requires a way to bisect lines and create right angles, essentially performing complex fieldwork geometry. The stone circles cease to be collections of haphazard boulders and transform into precise mathematical diagrams etched into the earth itself. This potential network of shared measurement hints at a connected intellectual world, a common school of thought that transcended local tribal identities. It raises a haunting question: was the knowledge of the megalithic yard and the geometry it enabled a local innovation that spread across Europe, or was it a fragment of a much older, wider system of understanding, a surviving thread from a common source that also influenced the pyramid builders far to the south? The stones do not say, but their spacing speaks volumes. This concept of a shared, hidden rulebook finds its most spectacular and controversial expression in one single location. The Giza Plateau is not merely a collection of 3 famous tombs. It is a unified mathematical diagram, a masterplan carved into the bedrock of the desert. Look beyond each pyramid's perfect geometry and you begin to see the lines connecting them, a silent conversation in stone. The most obvious clue is their orientation. The sides of the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre are aligned to the cardinal points with a precision that still baffles engineers, deviating from true north by only a tiny fraction of a degree. This alone speaks of a surveying capability far beyond simple stargazing, but the real secret lies in their arrangement relative to each other. For generations, observers noted that the 3 pyramids form a rough line across the desert, a configuration that some link to the 3 stars of Orion's belt in the constellation Orion. This celestial connection is a compelling narrative, suggesting the plateau was a mirror of the heavens, yet the mathematics on the ground may be even more precise and intentional. Researchers like John Legon have demonstrated how the entire layout can be generated from a few elegant geometric operations. Imagine starting with a single square, the footprint of the Great Pyramid. By using that square to generate a circle, and then using that circle to inscribe or circumscribe new squares, you can derive the exact positions for the centers of the other 2 pyramids. The distances between them, their offsets from a central axis, even the slight southwest shift of the smallest pyramid, Menkora, all emerge from this interplay of circles and squares. It is as if the master architect began with a sacred geometric seed and allowed it to grow according to its own innate rules, resulting in the complex we see today. This transforms our understanding of the site. Giza was not built in sequential, isolated projects. It was conceived from the very beginning as a single, coherent entity, a vast 3-dimensional equation. The pyramids are not just neighbors, they are terms in a formula, points on a graph. This coordinated geometry suggests a level of long-term planning and centralized knowledge that is staggering. It implies that the blueprint for the entire necropolis, a project spanning multiple reigns and generations, was locked in place before the first block of the first pyramid was ever quarried. The plateau itself becomes the ultimate monument, with each pyramid serving as a bold, permanent vertex in a grand design. This case study elevates the hidden mathematics from a feature of individual buildings to the governing principle of an entire sacred landscape. It shows us that the ancients were thinking on a scale we are only beginning to map, weaving their silent code not just into walls but into the empty spaces between them. If the geometry of a single pyramid whispers of advanced knowledge, the masterplan of Giza shouts it from the desert sands. Yet this Egyptian masterpiece, for all its grandeur, represents only one dialect of this global language. To hear another, we must travel to a site that seems its polar opposite, a place not of clean lines and soaring peaks, but of intricate, pulsating chaos. Yet the clean lines of Giza represent only one dialect of this global geometric language. To hear another, we must turn from the stark perfection of the desert to a number that seems to pulse with organic life. This is the golden ratio, often symbolized by the Greek letter phi, approximately 1.618. Unlike the rigid pi or the square root of 2, phi feels different. It is not born from the simple interplay of circle and square, but from a process of growth, of division within wholeness. Imagine a line divided so that the ratio of the whole line to the larger segment is the same as the ratio of the larger segment to the smaller one. That self-similar, repeating relationship is phi. It is the mathematics of a fern unfurling, the spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching pattern of a tree. It is nature's own algorithm for elegant growth, and for centuries, scholars and artists have claimed to see this same proportion echoed in humanity's greatest works of art and architecture. The Parthenon in Athens, with its majestic facade, is often cited. While the famous rectangular outline of its columns does not form a perfect golden rectangle, detailed analyses show that many of its key internal proportions, the spacing of columns, the height of the pediment relative to the width, do cluster remarkably close to ratios of phi. It creates a visual harmony that feels inherently right, balanced yet dynamic. This pattern repeats across continents and faiths. In the Great Mosque of Kairouan in Tunisia, one of the oldest places of Islamic worship, the proportions of the prayer hall, the courtyard, and even the massive minaret have been analyzed to reveal relationships that approximate the golden ratio. The builders may not have called it phi, but they were clearly employing a canon of proportion, a set of rules that dictated how one part of a structure should relate to another to achieve beauty and stability. This leads to the central, tantalizing question. Were these ancient architects consciously using this specific, irrational number, or were they simply employing a traditional system of pleasing proportions, a practical geometry passed down through guilds that naturally tended toward these harmonious ratios because they are, fundamentally, what we find beautiful? The historical record is frustratingly silent on explicit intent. No Egyptian papyrus or Greek text says, use 1.618 here. The evidence is circumstantial, written in the stones themselves. What we can say with certainty is that from the pyramids to classical temples, builders were obsessed with proportion. They worked with systems like the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, a series whose successive ratios converge on phi. They used dynamic rectangles and root rectangles, geometric constructions that easily generate proportions very close to the golden ratio. Whether by direct calculation or by the iterative refinement of a design tradition that favored certain harmonious shapes, the result is the same. Structures across the ancient world resonate with the same mathematical frequency found in a pine cone or a sunflower. This connection is the fourth principle's deepest meaning. It suggests that the hidden mathematics of monuments was not just about speaking to the cosmos or encoding secret knowledge. It was about tapping into a universal aesthetic, a foundational grammar of beauty written into the fabric of the natural world. By building these proportions into their temples and tombs, they were not just creating shelters or memorials. They were crafting environments that felt inherently sacred because they mirrored the very patterns of creation. The monument became a bridge between human ingenuity and natural order, a place where geometry ceased to be abstract and became a felt, experiential truth. This intuitive pull toward nature's proportions may be the most profound clue yet, hinting that the source of this shared mathematical language was not a lost civilization, but something far more accessible, the observable world itself. Yet, if the principles are so innate, why did this precise, global conversation in stone seemingly fade from human memory? The principles of sacred geometry found a breathtakingly complete expression in the jungles of Cambodia. Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument ever built, is far more than a collection of beautiful towers and galleries. It is a cosmological machine carved from sandstone, a three-dimensional mandala designed to map the entire structure of reality. For its builders in the 12th century, the universe had a center, the mythical Mount Meru, home of the gods and axis of all worlds. Angkor Wat was their audacious attempt to bring that celestial mountain down to earth, to create a physical foothold for the divine. Every aspect of its immense design serves this singular, symbolic purpose. The central quincunx of towers represents the 5 peaks of Mount Meru. The surrounding concentric galleries mirror the mountain's terraced slopes. The vast moat symbolizes the cosmic ocean that encircles the world. This was architecture as theology, a belief system rendered in precise, geometric stone. To walk its causeways is to traverse a cosmic diagram, moving from the outer realms of material existence toward the spiritual center. The mathematics here is profoundly symbolic. The complex exhibits a staggering degree of axial symmetry, with its primary east-west axis aligned with the equinox sun. Distances between key elements are not random. Scholars like Elena Manica have demonstrated through meticulous survey that the layout uses a consistent system of proportional scaling. The dimensions of enclosures, the spacing of towers, even the lengths of walkways, often relate to each other through whole number ratios or sacred measurements derived from the human body, like the hat and the danas. These were not just practical units, they were cosmological increments, ensuring that every part of the temple resonated in harmony with the whole, just as every part of the universe was believed to be connected. This transforms our understanding of the monument's function. Angkor Wat was not merely a place for prayer, it was an instrument for enlightenment, a geometric guide for both ritual and meditation. A priest or pilgrim moving through its spaces would be physically enacting a spiritual journey from the periphery of ignorance to the center of wisdom, following a path laid down by mathematical certainty. The symmetry enforced order and focus. The scaling of spaces created a rhythm of compression and release, mirroring the contraction and expansion of consciousness. In this context, the hidden mathematics achieves its most profound purpose. It moves beyond tracking stars or encoding constants. It becomes the very syntax for describing philosophical and spiritual concepts: order, balance, the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm. The temple is a calculator for the soul, where the equations solve for harmony, not harvests. This Cambodian masterpiece reveals that the global language of sacred geometry had many dialects, each adapted to a unique worldview, yet all speaking of a deep human desire to find the numerical patterns of the sacred and build them into the world we inhabit. But the Cambodian temple's symbolic geometry, while profound, speaks of a mathematics woven into belief. A different, more pragmatic kind of number whispers from the windswept Salisbury Plain. Here at Stonehenge we find evidence of a fifth principle, one that reveals how this hidden knowledge was not just philosophical, but intensely practical, born from the hands of the builders themselves. Long before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras formalized his famous theorem about right-angled triangles, the people who raised the blue stones may have been using its core truth. When researchers examine proposed early layouts of the monument, particularly the arrangement of the smaller blue stones, a compelling pattern emerges. These stones can be seen to form a near-perfect rectangle, and the dimensions of this rectangle are not random measurements. They correspond to a classic Pythagorean triple, a set of 3 whole numbers that perfectly satisfy the theorem. Imagine a rectangle with sides measuring 5 units and 12 units. The diagonal stretching from one corner to the opposite corner would measure exactly 13 units. 5, 12, 13, each a whole number, together forming a perfect right-angled triangle. This is not a coincidence one arrives at by guesswork. This is the signature of a specific and powerful building technique. How would a Neolithic culture discover and use such a relationship? The answer is beautifully simple: and it lies in a tool far more humble than a theodolite, a knotted rope. Often called rope stretchers, ancient surveyors across the world, from the banks of the Nile to the plains of Britain, used cords with knots tied at regular intervals. To create a perfect right angle, the fundamental starting point for so much construction, you wouldn't need a complex brass instrument. You would take your rope and, with the help of several people, stretch it out. If you formed a triangle with sides of 3 knots, 4 knots, and 5 knots, the angle between the 3-knot and 4-knot sides would be a perfect 90 degrees. The 5-12-13 triple is simply a more sophisticated version of the same principle, allowing for the creation of larger, more precise layouts. This is empirical mathematics discovered through the repetitive acts of craft and construction. It is knowledge that lives in the muscles and the eyes, in the feel of a taut rope and the sight of a straight line. The builders of Stonehenge likely used these rope stretcher techniques to lay out the entire site, establishing its primary axes and the positions of the massive Sarsen circle with astonishing accuracy. The presence of a Pythagorean triple in the bluestone rectangle, then, is a fossilized moment of this process. It is the permanent imprint of a temporary rope, a snapshot of the practical geometry that made the impossible monument possible. But we must ask, was this purely functional? Or did these whole number triples, these perfect triangles, carry a symbolic weight as well? In a culture that saw sacred meaning in the harmony of numbers, a triangle with such elegant, whole number sides might have been considered blessed, a shape endowed with stability and cosmic favor. By embedding it into the very heart of their temple, they were perhaps doing 2 things at once, solving an engineering problem and invoking a divine geometry. This principle completes a crucial part of the picture. It shows us the workshop where the global language was forged, not in abstract thought alone, but in the dust and sweat of construction sites. The rope, the knot, the stretched line, these were the tools that translated celestial patterns and harmonic proportions from idea into immutable stone. From the rope stretchers of Stonehenge to the desert of Peru, the scale of this mathematical ambition becomes almost unimaginable. Here, the hidden code leaves the vertical dimension entirely, sprawling across an immense horizontal canvas. The Nazca lines are not monuments you walk through, they are designs you must ascend to see, a gallery for the gods or perhaps for the sky itself. Etched into the arid pampa are hundreds of figures, from a hummingbird to a spider, but among the most striking are the purely geometric forms, vast trapezoids, perfect triangles, and parallel lines that run arrow straight for over 15 miles across rugged, uneven terrain. This is not architecture, it is something else entirely. Mathematics made land art on a scale that defies human perspective. To stand on the ground beside one of these lines is to see only a shallow groove in reddish gravel, a path fading into the distance. The full form, the precise geometry, reveals itself only from a vantage point high above, a viewpoint the creators themselves could never physically occupy. This fact alone poses a profound mystery. How do you design and execute a perfect triangle that is over half a mile on each side when you cannot see the whole shape as you build it? The answer, once again, lies in the elegant application of simple tools and profound knowledge. Researchers believe the Nazca artists, much like the megalithic builders, likely used a system of sighting stakes. By placing a series of tall wooden poles along a pre-planned straight line, a surveyor could stand at one stake, line up the next 2 or 3 in the distance, and direct workers to clear the path along that perfect sight line. To create a curve like the magnificent spiral, they may have used a central pivot point with a long, controlled rope sweeping out a perfect arc. The geometric shapes demonstrate a masterful command of plane geometry, the ability to scale up a small-scale model with consistent, flawless proportions. Drawing a straight line for a few feet is simple. Maintaining that line's perfect straightness across miles of hills and gullies, compensating for the curvature of the earth itself, is a feat of surveying that would challenge modern engineers. The trapezoids are particularly telling, these massive, flat-topped forms that narrow precisely along their length. To create such a shape, the builders had to understand not just parallel lines, but converging lines, controlling the angle of taper with unwavering consistency from one end to the other. This transforms the Nazca pampa into a giant chalkboard, and the geometric lines are the solved problems, the proofs. They are permanent demonstrations of what the culture knew how to do, a testament to their collective ability to organize labor, apply mathematics, and impose perfect order onto a chaotic landscape. The purpose remains wrapped in beautiful mystery, perhaps ritual pathways, astronomical markers, or offerings to deities in the sky. But regardless of their intent, the effect is undeniable. They turned the entire Earth into a monument to geometric certainty, proving that the silent language of mathematics could be written as large as the horizon itself. True north is a line drawn directly to the axis on which our planet spins, a fixed point in the turning sky. Finding it is not a matter of consulting a simple compass which points to the wandering magnetic pole. To align a monument to the true cardinal directions, as the builders of the Great Pyramid did with an error of only 1/15 of a degree, requires something far more sophisticated. It demands a patient, generations-long study of the heavens, likely focusing on the circumpolar stars, those eternal sentinels that never set below the horizon. By tracking the points where a specific star rose and set over the course of a year, ancient astronomers could bisect the arc to find a precise north-south line. This was not a casual act of orientation. It was a deliberate, painstaking effort to pin a man-made structure to the very pivot of the cosmos, to align human creation with the planet's fundamental axis. This relentless pursuit of cardinality reveals a sixth, powerful principle in their hidden mathematics, a drive to establish absolute order. The building was not just placed on the Earth, it was locked into the Earth's deepest geometry, becoming a terrestrial echo of celestial stability. This concept of anchoring to the planet's frame of reference leads to an even more staggering possibility. If these cultures understood how to find true north, did they also possess a broader understanding of the Earth itself, its shape and size? Some researchers, looking at the global distribution of ancient sacred sites, have pointed to curious geometric relationships. Independent researcher Jim Allison, for instance, has noted that many major Neolithic and Bronze Age sites, from Giza to Stonehenge to the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro, appear to be positioned along what are known as Great Circle routes, the shortest paths across a sphere. When you plot these locations on a globe, the distances between them can be expressed in neat fractions of the Earth's circumference, as if they were points on a pre-drawn geometric grid. This hints at a latent geodetic awareness, a potential understanding that they were building on a curved surface of known dimensions. Now we must tread carefully here. The scholarly community is deeply divided on this idea. Many archaeologists attribute such alignments to coincidence, the inevitable result of having countless ancient sites dotting the landscape, some of which will by chance form interesting patterns. They argue there is no material evidence, no maps or texts to prove intentional global planning. Yet, even if we set aside the most expansive claims, the underlying impulse remains significant. Whether by grand design or through a slower, cultural diffusion of ideas, the repeated appearance of precise cardinal alignment and large-scale geometric sighting points to a shared mathematical mindset. It was a worldview that sought not just to build in a location, but to build in relation to everything else, to the stars above and the spherical Earth below. The monument became a node in a vast, invisible network of meaning, a testament to a human desire to find our place within a coherent, measurable, and beautifully ordered universe. This drive to embed mathematics into the very plan of a city finds perhaps its purest expression not in the old world, but in the highlands of Mexico. Teotihuacan, the vast metropolis whose name means the place where one becomes a god, is a silent symphony of stone and space. Walking its central artery, the Street of the Dead, you are not moving through a random collection of buildings. You are traversing a living equation, a pre-planned geometric diagram executed with breathtaking patience over centuries. The entire city feels like a single, colossal monument, every element locked into a master plan of harmonic proportions. At its heart lies the Pyramid of the Sun, a mountain of earth and stone that dominates the landscape, but its power comes not just from its height, but from its relationship to everything around it. Scholars have identified a fundamental unit of measurement used throughout the city, often called the Teotihuacan unit, equivalent to about 83 centimeters. This standard ruler, much like the megalithic yard, appears repeatedly in the dimensions of platforms, plazas, and temples, providing the foundational rhythm for the entire urban composition. This standardization allowed for a coherence that feels almost musical. The distances between the city's great landmarks are not arbitrary. The length of the Street of the Dead, the spacing from the Pyramid of the Moon to the Ciudadela complex, the offset of the Pyramid of the Sun from the central axis, these grand measurements often relate to each other through simple, elegant ratios. You find proportions like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 woven into the urban fabric. This creates a visual and spatial harmony, a sense that every part of the city is in conversation with every other part, all speaking the same mathematical language. This harmony extends upward to the stars. The city's main axis is aligned just east of true north, a deliberate 15.5-degree orientation that many researchers believe held celestial significance. One compelling alignment involves the Pleiades star cluster. On key dates in the ancient Mesoamerican calendar, as viewed from the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, the Pleiades would set directly over the peak of the Pyramid of the Sun. This wasn't a solitary alignment for a single monument. It was a city-wide performance where architecture and astronomy collaborated in a public, predictable spectacle. The entire layout of Teotihuacan, therefore, represents a profound synthesis of principles we've seen elsewhere. It combined standardized measurement for practical construction, harmonic proportion for aesthetic and symbolic power, and precise celestial alignment to root the city in cosmic time. But here, these ideas were scaled up to an unprecedented degree. This was not a temple complex or a ceremonial center added to an existing town. The evidence strongly suggests the entire grid, the positions of its major pyramids and avenues, was laid out first, a visionary blueprint drawn on the empty plain. Generations of builders then spent hundreds of years faithfully filling in that geometric skeleton. This transforms our understanding of the hidden mathematics. It shows that this silent code was not reserved for tombs and temples alone. It could become the operating system for an entire civilization, governing the flow of daily life, trade, and ceremony. Teotihuacan stands as a monumental statement, a declaration that the most sacred geometry was not something to be visited occasionally, but something to be lived within every single day. Yet this silent code held one final, elegant secret, a master key capable of unlocking entire worlds of form from a single, simple act. Take a compass, the most basic tool of the geometer, and draw a circle. Now, without changing the compass's setting, place its point anywhere on that first circle's edge and draw a second circle of the same size. Where these two circles overlap, they create a distinct almond-shaped form. This is the Vesica Piscis, Latin for the bladder of the fish. It is a shape of profound simplicity, yet within its graceful curves lies a geometric universe waiting to be born. For the ancient master builder, this was not just an interesting pattern. It was the generative seed, the geometric atom from which all other sacred forms could be systematically constructed. Think of it as the original stem cell of sacred architecture, possessing the innate potential to differentiate into the entire family of perfect shapes. From this one figure, you can derive the foundational elements of their entire design language. Draw a line between the two circle centers, and you have the width of the Vesica. Now draw vertical lines from the top and bottom intersection points of the circles down to that center line. You have just constructed a perfect equilateral triangle. Extend lines from the triangle's points, and a hexagon emerges, a shape revered for its efficiency and harmony, seen in honeycombs and the basalt columns of the Giant's Causeway. Continue the process and the square reveals itself, the very symbol of the material world. This means that an architect, starting with nothing but a compass and a straight edge, could use the Vesica Piscis as a living recipe. It provided a step-by-step, reproducible method to generate every major shape needed for a sacred plan, all from one initial decision, the radius of that first circle. This geometric seed offered something priceless: consistency. It ensured that every proportion in the resulting building, from the width of the nave to the height of the altar, was born from the same sacred source, creating an unbroken chain of harmony from the first line drawn in the sand to the final stone placed in the vault. We see this principle whispering through history. The biblical descriptions of Solomon's temple, for instance, detail specific proportions that scholars have shown can be elegantly generated using the Vesica Piscis and the shapes derived from it, suggesting the layout was conceived through this geometric ritual. Centuries later, the master masons of the Gothic era used this same knowledge. The soaring cathedrals of Chartres and Notre Dame, with their intricate floor plans and radiant rose windows, are testaments to Vesica-based geometry. The characteristic pointed Gothic arch itself, that symbol of heavenward aspiration, is directly constructed from two overlapping circles, forming a Vesica at its core. The architects were not merely decorating with shapes, they were building with the very grammar of creation, using a system they believed tapped into the divine blueprint of the universe. This seventh principle reveals the ultimate purpose of the hidden mathematics. It was not just about measurement or alignment, though it included those. It was about generation, about starting with a perfect, abstract idea of unity, represented by the circle, and through a process of division and relationship, manifesting the beautiful diversity of the physical world. The Vesica Piscis was their geometric Big Bang, a silent, elegant explosion of form from a single point of origin. With this master key in hand, the ancient architects possessed a complete and closed system, a way to ensure that every temple, every cathedral, was not just a building, but a living diagram of cosmic order grown from a sacred seed. While the Vesica Piscis offered a sacred blueprint for temples, another ancient civilization applied a different kind of mathematical genius to an entirely different challenge: the orderly life of thousands of people. In the fertile plains of the Indus Valley, over 4,000 years ago, the builders of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were not reaching for the stars. They were solving the intricate, earthbound problems of urban living. Their monuments were not pyramids or circles, but cities themselves, and their hidden mathematics was the overt, brilliant logic of civic engineering. Here, we find a mathematical priority focused relentlessly on utilitarianism and standardization, a geometry of pure, elegant function. Walking through the excavated streets of Mohenjo-Daro, you are struck not by towering spires, but by an almost modern sense of order. The city was built on a precise, cardinal-aligned grid plan, with wide main boulevards running north-south and east-west, intersecting at perfect right angles to create uniform city blocks. This was not a haphazard settlement that grew organically over time. It was a premeditated design, a master plan drawn on a colossal scale before the first brick was ever laid. The geometry here served a clear, practical purpose. It optimized traffic flow, allowing for the efficient movement of people, goods, and carts through densely populated spaces. It simplified land division and property allocation. It created a predictable, navigable environment for a vast community, demonstrating a level of central planning and social organization that was extraordinary for its time. This mathematical thinking extended down to the very materials of construction. The bricks used throughout the cities, from the grand citadel walls to the humblest home, were standardized. They came in a consistent set of ratios with dimensions like length to width to height following a strict formula, such as 4 to 2 to 1. This standardization was a revolution in efficiency. It meant bricks from any kiln were interchangeable, speeding up construction and allowing for the prefabrication of architectural elements. It enabled the creation of uniform, strong walls, and most importantly, it made possible one of the Indus Valley civilization's greatest engineering achievements, a sophisticated, city-wide drainage and sanitation system. Every house, even the smallest, was connected to a network of covered, brick-lined drains that ran beneath the streets, channeling wastewater out of the city. These drains featured inspection holes and were carefully sloped to ensure flow, all relying on the precision of those standardized bricks and the level accuracy of the street grid. This is where their mathematics truly shines. It was applied directly to public health and well-being. The mathematical thinking in the Indus Valley was less about encoding cosmic constants like pi or phi into a sacred form. It was about solving the complex problems of scale, uniformity, and communal living. It was the mathematics of logistics, of creating harmony not with the cosmos, but within a society of tens of thousands. The grid plan minimized conflict and maximized order. The standardized bricks made ambitious public works projects feasible. The entire urban fabric became a testament to a different kind of intelligence, one that valued collective welfare, hygiene, and peaceful coexistence. The cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa show us that the hidden language of mathematics had many dialects. In some cultures, it was the syntax of the sacred, used to build bridges to the divine. In the Indus Valley, it was the grammar of the civic, used to build a functional, healthy, and astonishingly equitable society. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that this ancient knowledge was not monolithic. It was adaptable, serving the deepest needs and highest aspirations of the culture that wielded it, whether those aspirations pointed toward the heavens or were firmly rooted in the well-ordered streets of home. Yet the most organic form of mathematical harmony may not have been a ratio, but a rhythm of growth. This brings us to the eighth principle, a sequence of numbers so elegant it seems to govern the unfurling of a fern and the spiral of a galaxy. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. Each number is simply the sum of the two that came before it. This is the Fibonacci sequence, named for a medieval Italian mathematician, but its silent patterns whisper through the ancient world long before it ever had a name. In nature, this additive progression creates a sublime efficiency. It dictates the arrangement of leaves on a stem to maximize sunlight, the spiraling florets of a sunflower, and the curve of a nautilus shell. It is nature's algorithm for building outward from a center, packing the most growth into the smallest space with breathtaking beauty. And if ancient builders were keen observers of the natural world, seeking to infuse their creations with that same sense of vital harmony, might we find echoes of this sequence in their static stone? The evidence is subtle, more about feeling than explicit measurement. Consider the stepped form of a Mesopotamian ziggurat. As it rises in receding tiers, the proportional reduction of each level does not always follow a simple halving. In some designs, the relationship between the widths or heights of successive platforms can be seen to approximate the gentle, growing proportions of the Fibonacci series. This creates a visual rhythm that feels organic, like a mountain rising from the plains in successive ridges, rather than a stark, mechanical staircase. Similarly, look at the spacing in a colonnade, the row of columns lining a Greek temple facade. The intervals between columns are rarely uniform in a purely mathematical sense. While governed by strict rules of symmetry, the proportional relationships between the width of a column, the space between columns, and the overall width of the facade can sometimes resolve into ratios very close to those found in the Fibonacci sequence, like 5:8 or 8:13. This is not a claim that the architect had a scroll with the sequence written down. It is something more intuitive. By using a system of design where each element's size or position relates to its neighbors through an additive, cumulative logic, they naturally arrived at proportions that resonate with the same dynamic balance we find in a pine cone or a seashell. This intuitive design process connects directly back to the golden ratio, phi. As the Fibonacci sequence progresses, the ratio of each number to the one before it gets closer and closer to phi, approximately 1.618. The sequence is in essence a numerical pathway that converges on that perfect proportion of growth. So when we sense a Fibonacci-like rhythm in an ancient structure, what we are often feeling is an architectural expression approaching the golden ratio through a different, more organic door. It is the difference between imposing a perfect number from the top down and allowing a harmonious form to emerge from the ground up through a process of accumulation. This principle hints at a profound layer of the builder's understanding. They weren't just copying nature's shapes, they were intuiting nature's underlying mathematics, the recursive, self-similar patterns of growth. By weaving this rhythmic code into their temples and towers, they gave cold, inert stone a whisper of life, a sense of dynamic expansion frozen in time. The structure no longer feels imposed upon the landscape, but as if it grew from it, achieving a balance that feels eternally right because it mirrors the very patterns of creation itself. The rhythm of growth found in nature's mathematics found its philosophical counterpart in the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece. Here, geometry was not merely a tool for building, it was a pathway to truth, a way of thinking as vital as poetry or politics. The very word geometry means measuring the earth, and for the Greeks, this measurement was a sacred act, a means of uncovering the eternal forms they believed underpinned our fleeting reality. No place embodies this fusion of mathematics, myth, and landscape more powerfully than Delphi. Perched on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, this was not just a temple complex, it was the spiritual heart of the Greek world, the site believed to be the omphalos, the very navel of the earth. According to legend, Zeus released two eagles from opposite ends of the world, and they met at Delphi, marking the center of all things. The temple of Apollo housed the famous Pythia, the oracle whose cryptic prophecies guided kings and launched wars. But the power of Delphi may have been anchored in something more tangible than vapor rising from a chasm. It was rooted in the silent, precise language of geometry. Modern analyses of the site reveal a fascinating pattern. The key structures of the sanctuary, the temple itself, the theater, the treasuries built by various city-states, were not placed at random. Their positions appear to be determined by a network of isosceles triangles and other geometric figures, with sight lines connecting them across the rugged terrain. This was more than local planning, it was part of a grander design. These same geometric relationships seem to extend outward, connecting Delphi to other major sacred centers like the Acropolis in Athens and the island sanctuary of Delos, Apollo's mythical birthplace. This practice had a name, theros, which originally meant a sacred journey or pilgrimage. A theros would travel from his home city to a distant sanctuary like Delphi, following not just a physical path but a geometric one. The journey itself became a line drawn across the land, a living connection in a vast, invisible web. The mathematics served as the connective tissue of the sacred landscape. turning the scattered geography of independent city-states into a unified geometric proof of a shared Hellenic identity and divine order. In this system, the temple was not an isolated house for a god. It was a node in a network, a point of convergence where the lines of sacred geometry met. The oracle's pronouncements, therefore, did not come from a void. They emerged from a place deliberately situated at the center of a mathematically conceived world, a point where human inquiry intersected with a cosmic design laid bare through proportion and alignment. This transforms our understanding of Greek spirituality. The quest for knowledge, the consultation of the oracle, the athletic contests of the Pythian games, all were framed within a landscape that was itself a rational, measurable expression of the cosmos. To walk the sacred way up to the temple of Apollo was to traverse a geometric diagram, to move through a physical argument for harmony and unity. The hidden mathematics here achieved a uniquely Greek synthesis, blending rigorous reason with profound mystery, proving that the lines between earth and heaven could be drawn not only with faith, but with the unerring certainty of a geometer's rule. The silent geometry of sacred spaces was not always silent. Beyond the visual harmony of proportion and alignment, a ninth principle emerges, one that speaks directly to the ear and the body. This is the hidden mathematics of sound, an acoustic architecture that transformed stone into an instrument. At the ancient Mayan city of Chichen Itza, the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan holds a remarkable secret. If you stand at the base of its monumental staircase and clap your hands, the sound does not return as a simple echo. It comes back as a distinct high-pitched chirp, an uncanny mimicry of the sacred Quetzal bird, a creature deeply associated with the feathered serpent god for whom the pyramid is named. This is not a quirk of the ruins, it is a carefully engineered acoustic phenomenon. The sound of the clap travels up the steep staircase, reflecting off each of the pyramid's 91 steps. Because the steps are evenly spaced and the angles are precise, these reflections return to the listener's ear at slightly different times, creating a series of rapid echoes that our brain perceives as a single, pulsing chirp. The builders used the geometry of the structure itself, the mathematical relationship between step height and depth, to filter and reshape sound into a specific, symbolic auditory experience. This transforms the pyramid from a static monument into an interactive device. The ritual act of clapping, perhaps during a ceremony, would have literally called forth the voice of the divine bird, making the spiritual connection audible and communal. It was mathematics harnessed not just for the eye, but for the ear, blurring the line between architecture and ritual performance. An even more profound exploration of sacred sound is found deep underground on the Mediterranean island of Malta. The hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is a labyrinthine, three-level subterranean complex carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. While its purpose as a ceremonial space and final resting place is clear, its most arresting feature is its acoustics. Certain chambers, particularly the famous Oracle Room, possess extraordinary sonic properties. A voice spoken or chanted within this oval-shaped chamber is amplified and enriched, resonating with a powerful, otherworldly clarity that seems to fill the entire space. Low-frequency sounds, like a deep drum or a male voice chanting certain tones, can create a vibration that is felt physically in the bones as much as it is heard. Researchers who have studied the hypogeum suggest it may have been designed to amplify specific resonant frequencies, perhaps those of ritual chants, to induce altered states of awareness during ceremonies. The builders achieved this by intuitively or deliberately understanding the physics of sound waves. They carved the chambers with specific dimensions, parabolic shapes, and wall angles that would capture, reflect, and amplify sound in particular ways. This represents a sophisticated application of mathematical principles, an understanding of how the geometry of a space dictates the behavior of sound within it. By controlling volume, reverberation, and resonance, they could engineer an environment that directly shaped human consciousness, using sound as a tool for transcendence. This acoustic principle completes a profound expansion of our understanding. The hidden code was not locked in stone for the eyes alone. It was a multi-sensory blueprint designed to be experienced with the whole body. The perfect proportions that pleased the eye also created harmonic resonances for the ear. The alignment with celestial bodies was matched by an alignment with the vibrational frequencies that could move the human spirit. In these spaces, mathematics became a medium for complete immersion, proving that the ancient builders sought not just to show us the sacred, but to let us hear it, feel it, and resonate with it from the inside out. Isolation did not silence the mathematical impulse. Far out in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, on one of the most remote islands on Earth, the same ancient conversation between stone and sky was taking place. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a speck of volcanic rock over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. For centuries, its people developed in profound solitude, yet they too felt the universal need to impose order, to measure, and to memorialize their world in monumental form. Their legacy, the iconic Moai statues, are more than mysterious faces gazing inland. They are the endpoints of a sophisticated system of mathematical and astronomical intention, built upon platforms known as ahu. These ahu are not simple foundations. They are carefully constructed stone altars, often aligned with breathtaking precision. Researchers have documented that many of these platforms are oriented to key celestial events. The Great Ahu at Tongariki, with its 15 towering moai, is aligned to the summer solstice sunrise, capturing the first light of the longest day in a dramatic display. Other ahu across the island point to the winter solstice or the equinoxes. This required the Rapa Nui builders to possess and apply precise observational knowledge of the solar cycle, translating the sun's yearly journey into a fixed terrestrial marker made of tons of carved stone. The placement of the statues themselves on these platforms may also follow deliberate rules. The spacing between the moai on an ahu is often remarkably even, suggesting a standardized unit of measure or a proportional system governing their arrangement, turning the platform into a rhythmic sequence of figures rather than a random cluster. This spatial order extends to the island's most enigmatic puzzle, the Rongorongo script. Incised on wooden tablets, this undeciphered writing system contains glyphs that some researchers believe represent calendrical or astronomical notations, perhaps recording lunar cycles or important seasonal markers. While its full meaning remains locked away, the very existence of such a notation system on this isolated island is profoundly telling. It signifies a culture engaged in the same fundamental project as the pyramid builders and the megalithic surveyors, the project of encoding knowledge into a permanent form. Easter Island's story delivers a crucial insight. The drive to weave mathematics into monumental layouts is not a cultural secret passed from one civilization to another like a traded artifact. It is a fundamental human response, a cognitive tool that emerges independently when a society reaches a certain level of complexity and looks upon the world with a questioning mind. Faced with the cycles of nature and the desire to honor their ancestors and gods, the people of Rapa Nui, in complete isolation, arrived at the same solution as cultures they could never have known existed. They built a measured, aligned, and lasting order into their landscape. Their silent stones stand as a powerful testament to a shared human instinct to find the patterns in the chaos and make them permanent. Numbers whispered their own sacred stories into the blueprints of the ancient world. Beyond the clean lines of geometry and the precise angles of alignment, a 10th principle reveals itself, one where counting itself became a holy act. This is the realm of symbolic numbers and numerology, where the quantity of steps, the count of tiers, or the number of squares in a grid held a power as real as any measurement. For these cultures, numbers were not neutral tools for calculation. They were living symbols, each carrying a specific cosmic or divine meaning, and the architecture became the physical manifestation of this numerical cosmology. The layout was a theological statement written in integers. Consider the towering ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia, those massive stepped pyramids meant to bridge earth and heaven. They were not built with a random number of levels. Most famously, they rose in 7 distinct tiers. This was no architectural accident. In the Mesopotamian sky, 7 wandering celestial bodies were visible to the naked eye: the sun, the moon, and the 5 classical planets known to them. These 7 lights were seen as divine, governing the rhythms of time and fate. By constructing their sacred mountain in 7 levels, the builders were literally building the cosmos, creating a staircase that mirrored the 7-fold structure of the heavens themselves. Each ascending tier was a step closer to the realm of the gods, a physical progression through a numerical and spiritual hierarchy. This symbolic use of number spans the globe. In Norse tradition, the universe was held together by 9 worlds connected by the great tree Yggdrasil. In ancient Chinese cosmology, 9 was the ultimate Yong number, associated with the emperor and celestial perfection. This reverence translated into architecture, where temple complexes, palace gates, and ceremonial altars were often arranged in multiples or patterns of 9, embedding that celestial perfection into the very plan of the site. The number held the meaning, and the building gave it form. Perhaps no system illustrates this principle more completely than the Hindu science of architecture and design, known as Vastu Shastra. Here, the ground plan for a temple or even a home begins not with a sketch, but with a sacred grid called the Vastu Purusha Mandala. This is typically a square divided into a grid of smaller squares, most commonly 8 by 8 or 64 squares, or 9 by 9, 81 squares. This grid is not merely for scaling, it is a cosmic map. Each smaller square is assigned to a specific deity, a celestial spirit, or a cosmic force. The central squares are the most sacred, reserved for the primary deity, while the outer squares govern aspects of life, health, prosperity, and the directions. When a master builder lays out the foundation, they are not just marking walls, they are invoking and balancing these myriad energies, ensuring that the structure itself becomes a harmonious vessel for divine presence and human well-being. The mathematics here is profoundly numerological. The choice of an 8 by 8 grid versus a 9 by 9 carries theological weight, connecting the building to different layers of cosmic reality. This 10th principle completes a crucial layer of our understanding. It shows that the hidden mathematics within these monuments was often a fusion of the measurable and the mystical. The same mind that could calculate the precise angle for a solstice sunrise also held a deep belief in the spiritual power of the number 7 or 9. The act of counting was as sacred as the act of measuring. A blueprint was more than a construction document. It was a numerical prayer, a physical argument about the structure of the universe, built one symbolic number at a time. The stones themselves were silent, but the quantities spoke volumes about how these cultures saw reality as an ordered, numbered, and deeply meaningful whole. Imperial power found its ultimate geometric expression behind the vermilion walls of Beijing. The Forbidden City, constructed in the 15th century, is more than a palace. It is a mathematical manifesto carved from wood and stone, a deliberate deployment of geometry to manifest an unshakable political and cosmic order. Here, the hidden principles we have traced across the world were not merely symbolic, they were explicitly weaponized as tools of statecraft. Every line, every proportion, every spatial relationship was meticulously calculated to communicate one overwhelming message: the absolute divine authority of the Son of Heaven. At the heart of this design is an unbreakable rule: perfect axial symmetry. The entire complex, spanning over 180 acres, is organized along a single, dominant north-south axis. This central line does more than organize buildings, it pierces the very cosmos. It was deliberately aligned with the pole star, the celestial pivot around which the heavens eternally turn. By anchoring his palace to this unmoving point, the emperor physically positioned himself as the axis mundi, the still center of all creation, the human counterpart to the celestial pole. To walk the central pathway from the meridian gate to the gate of divine might is to traverse a carefully choreographed journey through layers of power. The design employs relentless bilateral balance, mirroring every hall, every gate, every courtyard perfectly across this central line. This creates a visual experience of overwhelming stability and control. There is no chaos, no surprise, only perfect, repeated order stretching as far as the eye can see. This symmetry is not just aesthetic, it is psychological, impressing upon every visitor, from foreign ambassador to lowly official, the immutable and balanced nature of imperial rule. The mathematics extends into a precise hierarchy of space. The complex is divided into two distinct realms, the outer court for ceremonial functions and the inner court for the emperor's private life. Each realm is further subdivided into a series of courtyards and halls, with their sizes, roof styles, and even the number of mythical animal statues on their ridges dictated by a strict code. The most important buildings, like the Hall of Supreme Harmony used for coronations, are the largest, set on the highest marble terraces, and positioned directly on the central axis. Less critical structures shrink in size and are pushed progressively farther from the central line. This creates a spatial gradient of importance, a physical map of the imperial bureaucracy and cosmic hierarchy made manifest in brick and timber. You do not need to read an edict to understand your place. The architecture itself tells you through proportion and placement. The Forbidden City represents a conscious, totalizing application of the sacred geometric language. It takes the principles of cardinal alignment, harmonic proportion, and symbolic number and deploys them not for spiritual enlightenment or communal ritual, but for the consolidation of secular political power. The geometry here is not hidden, it is glaringly overt, a permanent and intimidating demonstration of control. It proves that the same mathematical grammar used to build temples for gods could be used to build palaces for a god-king, turning the silent code of the ancients into the visible architecture of absolute authority. This imperial blueprint raises a final, pivotal question. If this knowledge was so powerful, so universal, and so deliberately used, why did its clear, coherent voice in monumental design seem to grow quieter, fragmenting into the myriad styles of the modern world? The undeniable beauty of these patterns forces us to confront a critical question. Are we witnessing a lost global science, or are we, the modern observers, the ones connecting dots that were never meant to be linked? This is the essential challenge of separating profound design from compelling coincidence, and it requires a disciplined, skeptical eye. The human brain is a spectacular pattern recognition machine, hardwired to find order in chaos. This gift is also our greatest vulnerability when studying the ancient world, leading us down fascinating but false trails. We must navigate the subtle space between meaningful discovery and what scholars call confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of our existing beliefs. It is far too easy to measure a monument, find a number that resonates with a modern constant like pi or phi, and declare it an intentional code. But is it? Many seemingly magical mathematical relationships can emerge from simple, practical building techniques. A builder using a fixed rope length to lay out a circle will naturally generate a figure whose circumference relates to its diameter through pi. A culture that favors certain pleasing proportions in their art may, through generations of refinement, converge on ratios close to the golden ratio without ever calculating an irrational number. These are not secrets, they are the natural byproducts of craft and aesthetic tradition. The real test is consistency and context. A single alignment at one site could be accidental. But when the same solstice alignment is repeated at dozens of sites across a culture, as seen in the ancestral Puebloan world, the probability of coincidence plummets. When a unit of measure like the proposed megalithic yard appears with statistical regularity across hundreds of monuments, it demands an explanation beyond chance. The most credible evidence often comes from the confluence of multiple data streams. If a pyramid's base encodes a mathematical constant, and its sides align to true north within a fraction of a degree, and its interior chambers point to specific stars, the case for integrated, intentional design grows overwhelmingly strong. Yet even here we face a profound silence. The builders of Stonehenge left us no engineering manuals. The architects of Teotihuacan wrote no treatises on urban geometry. We are often interpreting a finished product without the blueprint, trying to reverse engineer the thought process from the stone alone. This is where archaeological context becomes our most valuable tool. Finding a carved diagram at a quarry site or a ceremonial object marked with measured increments provides a direct link to intent. The discovery of the so-called Babylonian tablet Plimpton 322, for instance, proves that scribes nearly 4,000 years ago were working with Pythagorean triples, giving tangible, textual support to what we might otherwise speculate was mere rope-stretcher knowledge. Without such explicit artifacts, we must be humble. The goal of this exploration is not to prove a single, unified conspiracy of ancient geniuses, but to appreciate the diverse, sophisticated ways in which human cultures independently harnessed mathematics to solve their greatest challenges, to express their cosmology, and to seek harmony with their world. By applying this rigorous, critical lens, we honor their achievements far more than by wrapping them in unverified mystery. We move from fantasy to a richer, more credible history, one where the truth is astonishing enough on its own. These stones were not endpoints but starting points. The same mathematical intuition that raised pyramids and aligned temples did not vanish with the civilizations that wielded it. Instead, it flowed like an underground river, surfacing centuries later to nourish the formal sciences we recognize today. This hidden legacy forms a direct lineage from the monument to the laboratory, from the empirical problem solver to the abstract theorist. Consider the very foundations of Western mathematics. When the Greek philosopher Thales traveled to Egypt, he did not find a society of theoretical geometers. He found master builders, land surveyors known as rope stretchers, experts in the practical arts of measurement and proportion. From them, he absorbed not just techniques, but a way of seeing space as something that could be understood through reason and rule. He took these empirical tools and asked a revolutionary new kind of question. He moved from how to measure a pyramid's shadow to calculate its height, to asking why that method worked, seeking the universal principle behind it. This was the pivotal leap from applied craft to deductive science. The geometry of the temple precinct became the geometry of Euclid's elements, systematized and proven. The Egyptians sought the ratio defining a pyramid's slope, transformed into the Greek study of angles and triangles. The monuments provided the raw data, the lived experience of mathematical truth, which Greek thinkers then refined into a logical framework. This transmission of knowledge was not confined to the Mediterranean. For over a millennium, the precise astronomical observations encoded in stone calendars were the world's most reliable timekeepers. The Maya, with their obsessive tracking of Venus and solar cycles, developed a calendar of legendary accuracy. Their need to predict celestial events for ritual and agriculture drove a sophisticated understanding of planetary motion, a form of proto-astronomy recorded in complex glyphs. Similarly, the solstice markers of countless cultures created a collective, global dataset about the sun's behavior. This accumulated, practical sky watching formed the essential groundwork upon which later formal astronomy was built. When Nicolaus Copernicus sought to understand the heavens, he stood on the shoulders of generations of anonymous observers who first mapped the stars' paths not on parchment, but on the horizon, using stones as their fixed reference points. Their monuments were the original observatories, their alignments the first recorded data points in humanity's long quest to chart the cosmos. The architectural canons of proportion, those silent rules of harmony, found their way directly into the heart of the Renaissance. When European scholars rediscovered classical texts, they were not just reading philosophy. They were studying the ruins of Roman temples and the descriptions of Greek buildings, structures built according to those ancient principles of sacred geometry. Architects like Leon Battista Alberti explicitly looked to Vitruvius, a Roman engineer who wrote of the proportions of the human body as the model for perfect architecture. This idea that beauty stems from mathematical harmony was a direct inheritance from the pyramid and the Parthenon. The Renaissance masters saw in these ancient ruins the proof that number governed aesthetic perfection. They used this rediscovered language to design the domes of Florence and the basilicas of Rome, believing they were restoring a lost golden age of order. The hidden code of the ancients became the Chinese letter manifesto of humanist art, proving that the search for perfect proportion is a thread connecting the Neolithic builder to Michelangelo. In this light, the great monuments reveal their ultimate function. They were humanity's first textbooks, carved in stone rather than written on papyrus. They were our first laboratories where concepts of scale, force, and statics were tested on a colossal, irreversible scale. Every successful pyramid was a proven theorem in structural engineering. Every enduring stone circle was a validated hypothesis about celestial mechanics. The builders worked out fundamental principles of physics and mathematics through trial and error, iteration and observation, long before those principles had names or formal proofs. They learned about load distribution by stacking megaliths, understood leverage to move them, and grasped trigonometry to align them. This was science in its most visceral form, a dialogue between human ambition and material reality. The legacy of this ancient mathematics is therefore not a collection of mysterious anomalies, but the very foundation of our scientific worldview. It reminds us that abstract thought springs from concrete need, that the desire to build something lasting, to mark time, and to reach for the sacred, is what first taught us to measure the world, and in doing so, to begin to understand it. For centuries, the subtle geometry of these sites was interpreted through the human eye, limited by perspective and prone to error. Today, a technological revolution is granting us a new kind of vision, one that sees through jungle canopies and measures with a cold, digital certainty. Tools like LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, are transforming our understanding. Imagine an aircraft flying over the dense rainforests of Central America, firing millions of laser pulses toward the ground. These pulses penetrate the thick foliage, bouncing off the solid stone of ancient pyramids and causeways hidden below. The returning data builds a breathtakingly precise three-dimensional map of the ground surface, stripping away the trees to reveal the civilization beneath. What these scans have uncovered is nothing short of revolutionary. Beneath the seemingly chaotic jungle growth around known Maya cities like Tikal, LiDAR has revealed vast, sprawling grids of farmland, intricate networks of raised roads, and entire ceremonial complexes previously unknown. This shows these were not isolated city-states, but parts of a densely populated, meticulously managed landscape, organized with a geometric precision we could barely perceive from the ground. The scale of planning was far grander than we ever imagined. This technology provides hard, quantifiable data, moving discussions from romantic speculation into the realm of rigorous science. We are no longer guessing at alignments, we are measuring them down to the millimeter. Ground-penetrating radar peers into the earth beneath Stonehenge, mapping its subterranean archaeology without moving a single stone. Photogrammetry, which uses thousands of overlapping photographs to create perfect digital models, allows us to study the precise angles and wear patterns on a monument from half a world away. Satellite geodesy can detect minute shifts in the Earth's crust, helping us understand how entire sites may have settled or moved over millennia. This digital renaissance is confirming the extreme accuracy of the ancients in stunning detail. It verifies that the cardinal alignment of the Great Pyramid is not merely close, it is astonishingly exact. It maps the Nazca lines with such fidelity that we can study the construction sequence of each geometric form. This technology acts as a universal translator for the silent language of stone, giving us the vocabulary to finally appreciate its full grammar. We can now see the Masterplan not as a series of isolated points, but as a continuous, intelligent design etched across continents. The true scale of their mathematical prowess is coming into focus, not as myth, but as measurable fact. These digital keys are turning the locks on secrets that have waited patiently in the landscape, proving that the whispers we thought we heard were just the beginning of a much clearer conversation. This deep-seated drive to find patterns is not a cultural trait, but a biological inheritance. Our minds are constantly scanning the world, connecting dots, and constructing narratives from the raw data of our senses. We see faces in clouds, hear words in static, and find constellations in random star fields. This is not a flaw, it is the very engine of human learning and survival. For our ancient ancestors, recognizing the pattern of predator tracks, the seasonal cycle of plants, or the rhythmic motion of the stars was not philosophical, it was essential for life. This cognitive wiring, this insatiable hunger for order, is the foundational spark behind every monument we have explored. When those early builders looked upon the vast, often terrifying chaos of the natural world, their response was not passive acceptance. It was an active, creative rebellion. They used the most durable materials they had, stone and earth, to carve out pockets of perfect predictability. By imposing a flawless circle on uneven ground, aligning a corridor to a single ray of sunlight, or spacing stones according to a strict numerical rule, they were creating sanctuaries of certainty. In a world of floods, droughts, and unpredictable storms, the geometry of their temple would never change. Its alignment would hold true every year. Its proportions would remain eternally harmonious. This was an act of profound psychological comfort, a way to assert human agency against the backdrop of an indifferent cosmos. The hidden mathematics, therefore, was far more than a technical manual. It was a meaning-making machine. The process of designing and raising these structures transformed abstract, often fearful, questions about life, death, and the divine into something tangible and manageable. The incomprehensible vastness of the sky could be understood through the fixed points of a solstice alignment. The mystery of the afterlife could be navigated via the symbolic journey through a geometrically precise tomb. The chaotic forces of nature could be appeased by building an altar whose form mirrored the perfect ratios found in a seashell or a flower. In this light, the monument becomes a conversation. It is the human mind reaching out, using the universal language of mathematics, to ask its deepest questions of the universe and then building the answers in stone for all to see. This shared cognitive drive explains why cultures across impossible distances arrived at such similar solutions. They were not copying a blueprint from a lost civilization, though ideas certainly traveled. They were each independently responding to the same internal compulsion, using the same remarkable human brain to seek order, create meaning, and leave a permanent mark that whispered, "We were here and we understood." Yet for all the patterns we can now measure with laser precision, the stones guard their most intimate secrets with stubborn grace. the Great Pyramid's near-perfect alignment to true north stands as an enduring engineering riddle. Modern scholars agree it was likely achieved by tracking circumpolar stars, but the exact, repeatable method used to transfer that celestial bearing to the desert floor with such minuscule error remains a subject of lively debate. Was it a complex ritual of sighting poles and plumbobs conducted over years, or a brilliantly simple technique now lost to time? We have the breathtaking result, but the workshop notes are missing. Similarly, at sites like the Osirian at Abydos, an immense subterranean structure built of Cyclopean masonry, we encounter a different kind of mystery. Its overwhelming geometric rigor, its stark, powerful lines and precise proportions feel purposeful and profound, yet its exact ritual function within the larger temple complex is still unclear. Why invest such staggering effort in a space whose use seems almost cryptically abstract? The precision itself appears to be the primary message, a mathematical statement whose full meaning we have yet to fully translate. Then there is the most expansive puzzle of all, the tantalizing suggestion of a shared, archaic global measurement system. Researchers like Alan Butler have pointed to curious correspondences, noting how ancient units from different cultures, the megalithic yard, the Egyptian royal cubit, the Roman foot, can sometimes be related through simple geometric transformations or planetary ratios. The idea that a fundamental standard, perhaps derived from the dimensions of the Earth itself, could have been known and used across millennia and continents is highly controversial. Mainstream archaeology largely dismisses it, citing a lack of direct evidence and the high probability of coincidence when comparing countless units from countless cultures. Yet the persistence of the idea is itself intriguing. It speaks to a deep human intuition that the builders of these wonders were not working in isolated bubbles of genius, but were perhaps tapping into a forgotten layer of unified knowledge about our world. These unresolved questions, however, are not failures of our understanding. They are its lifeblood. They are open invitations. A mystery solved is a chapter closed, but a mystery pondered is a conversation that spans generations. The unresolved alignment, the enigmatic structure, the controversial measurement, they ensure that the field of archaeoastronomy and historical geometry remains a living science, not a museum of settled facts. They drive innovators to develop new scanning technologies, inspire historians to re-examine old texts with fresh eyes, and compel mathematicians to look for simpler, more elegant explanations. The stones, it seems, still have more stories to tell, but only to those who are willing to listen not just with their eyes, but with a mind open to the elegant, silent language of mathematics. The stones are not just relics to observe, they are puzzles waiting to be solved with your own eyes. For the modern traveler, knowing what to look for transforms a simple visit from passive sightseeing into an active treasure hunt, a chance to read the silent language written into the landscape. The first and simplest tool you can bring is a humble compass. While it points to magnetic north, not true north, it gives you a baseline. Stand at the entrance of a temple or at the foot of a monolith and hold it level. Does the structure face a cardinal direction, or is it angled deliberately off axis? That intentional skew is often the first whisper of an astronomical alignment, a clue that the builders were speaking to the sun or stars. Next, train your eye to see proportions, not just shapes. In a colonnade, notice if the space between columns relates to the width of the columns themselves. In a doorway or window, does the height seem to be about 1.6 times the width? You are looking for the echoes of harmonic ratios, the fingerprints of a design canon. In any major temple complex, from Angkor Wat to the Forbidden City, consciously seek out the central axis. Walk it if you can. Feel how every element symmetrically balances along this invisible line of power, how your journey from gate to inner sanctum is a geometric progression into sacred space. If your timing aligns with an equinox or solstice, make a point to be present. Watch how the sunlight interacts with the architecture. Does a shadow pierce a specific carving? Does light flood a chamber that is dark all year? You are witnessing the ancient calendar in action, the monument performing its primary function just for you. At a place like Stonehenge, look beyond the famous Sarsen circle. Find the 4 so-called station stones that form a near-perfect rectangle around the site. That shape is a potential key, a massive application of a Pythagorean triple laid out on the earth. At the Parthenon in Athens, don't just admire the columns. Look closely at their subtle curves and tilts. The stylobate, the platform on which they stand, bows upward in the center. The columns themselves lean inward slightly. These are not signs of settling, they are brilliant optical corrections. The builders knew straight lines would appear to sag over long distances, so they engineered these curves to create the illusion of perfect straightness and strength, applying advanced geometry to serve human perception. By engaging with a site through this mathematical lens, you shift from tourist to interpreter. You stop asking what it is and start asking why it is shaped this way. You become an active participant in a conversation that has been waiting for centuries, connecting your curiosity directly to the ingenuity of the master builder who placed that stone. The code is not broken, it is simply waiting for more readers. This powerful connection to the past carries an equally powerful responsibility. The stones that whisper their mathematical secrets are not inert laboratory specimens. They are the sacred heart of living cultures, the final resting places of ancestors, and fragile pages in a collective human story that is still being written. To listen to their silent language, we must first learn how to listen with respect. The very act of uncovering these geometric patterns can, if done carelessly, become a form of trespass. Imagine a researcher driven by pure intellectual curiosity, using ground-penetrating radar to map the subterranean chambers of a temple that remains a site of active prayer and ceremony for a local community. The data might be scientifically invaluable, but the method can feel invasive, even sacrilegious, to those for whom the site is a living bridge to the divine, not a puzzle to be solved. This is the essential ethical dimension of our exploration. The non-invasive technologies we celebrate, like LiDAR and photogrammetry, are not just tools of discovery. They are, first and foremost, tools of preservation. They allow us to see without touching, to map without digging, to learn without disturbing the sacred soil. This approach prioritizes the integrity of the site itself over the extraction of its artifacts, understanding that sometimes the most profound respect is to leave things exactly as they were found. But ethical study goes beyond methodology. It requires a deep humility about the limits of our own perspective. For centuries, Western academia has often approached ancient knowledge with a colonial mindset, measuring everything against its own scientific framework. We look at a temple's layout and ask, does it encode pi? But the builders may have been asking an entirely different question. Their mathematics was likely not a separate, abstract discipline as we conceive it today. It was woven seamlessly into their art, their music, their rituals, and their entire cosmology. The proportions of a Maya pyramid might simultaneously solve an engineering problem, track the Venus cycle, represent a creation myth, and resonate with a specific harmonic frequency used in ceremony. To reduce this rich, integrated tapestry of meaning to a single line of code for pi is to miss the symphony for a single note. It imposes our categories onto their worldview, potentially flattening a multidimensional spiritual technology into a one-dimensional mathematical trick. This is why collaboration is not just ethical, it is essential for true understanding. The most insightful interpreters of these sites are often the descendants of the people who built them. Indigenous knowledge holders carry oral histories, ritual practices, and cultural contexts that no radar can detect and no external scholar can fully intuit. When researchers partner with these communities, a more complete picture emerges. A geometric pattern on a petroglyph might be explained not as a random decoration, but as a map of clan territories or a record of a celestial event described in an ancient song. This collaborative model shifts the narrative from one of extraction to one of dialogue. It ensures that the story of hidden mathematics enriches the cultural significance of a place rather than appropriating it or reducing it to a curious anomaly. The goal is not to claim we have cracked their code, but to humbly acknowledge that we are beginning to learn their language. After all, these awe-inspiring places were built to inspire awe, to connect humanity with something greater. Our modern fascination with their geometry should deepen that connection, not replace it with cold calculation. By prioritizing preservation, embracing multiple ways of knowing, and centering respect, we ensure that our quest to understand the past does not come at the cost of the legacy we are meant to protect for the future. The stones have endured for millennia. Our responsibility is to ensure they can continue to speak on their own terms for millennia more. From the solstice light at Newgrange to the harmonic proportions of Angkor Wat, we have traced a silent conversation written across the globe. This was not the work of a single lost civilization whispering secrets to the wind. It was something far more profound, a recurring human instinct, a shared cognitive spark that ignited independently wherever people looked up at the stars and sought to bring their order down to earth. The hidden mathematics we have uncovered reveals a tapestry of practical genius, spiritual yearning, and artistic vision, woven together by cultures who spoke different languages but understood the same universal grammar of form and number. Our ancestors were not primitive beings struggling merely to survive. They were profound observers, tracking celestial cycles with patient precision over generations. They were ingenious engineers, solving monumental problems of scale, alignment, and stability with ropes, stakes, and sheer collective will. They were philosophical artists for whom a perfect circle was a symbol of eternity, a right angle a pact with the cosmos, and a harmonic ratio a bridge to the divine. They used the land itself as their parchment and stone as their permanent ink, writing their understanding of reality into the very landscape. This legacy reframes our entire relationship with the past. These monuments are not just relics of bygone power or piety. They are frozen moments of thought. Each standing stone is a crystallized question about the nature of time. Each pyramidal slope is a solidified calculation about space and force. Each aligned corridor is a petrified observation of the heavens. They are ideas made solid, arguments about the universe rendered in granite and limestone. So the next time you stand before an ancient site, whether it is a local stone circle or a world-famous pyramid, challenge yourself to look with new eyes. Look beyond its immense age and overwhelming size. Quiet the mind that sees only a tourist attraction or a historical artifact. Instead, try to see the blueprint. Look for the cardinal lines, sense the proportional harmony, and imagine the play of light on a sacred day. See it not as a finished object, but as a verb, as the act of building meaning itself. The silent code is there, waiting in the layout. It is an open invitation not to solve a final mystery, but to join an endless conversation, a dialogue between human curiosity and the mathematical fabric of reality. It asks us to keep questioning, to keep exploring, and to never cease marveling at the boundless, beautiful ingenuity of the human spirit, a spirit that has always reached across all time, to measure the immeasurable and to make the eternal